So before I start the webinar on SC, I want to know from you, okay, what approach you currently follow when you are solving SC questions, okay? So I'll put up a couple of questions, and for each of the questions, I will put up a poll. I want you to answer the poll, and then we will take this forward, okay? So here is the first question for you, and let me just put up the poll for you. Okay, so the question here was, which of the following do you believe is most important for solving the GMAT SC questions? Okay, having proper knowledge of the rules that are to be applied by solving it, or being able to recognize the patterns in the questions and the answer choices, and being able to understand the meaning of the original sentence. That is choice A. Which of these is most important? Please remember the word most important. I'm sure you will agree with me that in one way or the other, all three are required. But according to you, what is the most important? All right. So I'll count 5 and I'll stop the poll. So here goes 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So let me end the poll. And all right, so 20% of you believe that it is necessary, most important, to have proper knowledge of the rules to be applied. Okay, you should know all the rules of grammar so that you are able to solve the SC questions with accuracy. All right, 30% of you believe that you should be able to recognize the patterns which are there in the GMAT questions and the patterns that the answer choices are usually based on. Okay, and 50% of the class here believes it is important to understand the meaning of the original sentence. That is, choice A needs to be understood correctly. That is the most important thing. Okay, just hold on to that thought. Therefore, 50% of you believe that understanding the meaning of the original sentence is important, and the rest of you are divided between rules and patterns. Okay, so just hold on to that, and let me put up the next question for you here. Okay, here is the next question for you. So how do you allocate your time when you're solving the SC questions? And let me reset the poll. Just give me a moment. Okay, here you are. All right, so do you give almost equal time to all the choices? So you give whatever time you're taking overall to solve a question, you give to a certain thing, and to choice A, B, C, and D? Or do you give most of the time to choice A, and then the remaining time, whatever is left, you divide it between the other 4 choices? So you give, let's say, for example, if you're taking 2 minutes to solve a question, you give 1 full minute to choice A, and the remaining 1 minute you divide among the 4 choices. Or you quickly go through some of the choices and you eliminate them, and then you give the remaining time to the other choices. So what do you do? Okay, so I'll again count 5 before I end the poll. This is 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. All right, so now the interesting thing here, 10% of you believe that 10% of you give almost equal time to all the choices. Another 10% of you give maximum time to choice A, and then you divide your time among the other choices. Now, 80% of you eliminate some of the choices, and then you give the remaining time to the other choices. So now, interestingly here, if you recall the first question, 50% of you agreed that understanding the meaning of the original sentence was very important, right? And yet, only 10% of you give most of the time to choice A. So what does this mean? What do these statistics tell? So 50% of you agree that understanding the meaning is important, but just about 10% of you really give time to understanding the meaning of the original choice, which means, very simply put, you do know that understanding the meaning is important, but you don't really know how to implement it, how to implement this meaning-based approach. So therefore, some of you give equal time to all the choices, and most of you here, 80% of you, you just go about eliminating some of the choices. Now, the the basic agenda of this session will be to help you understand that this meaning-based approach, what is it? What is this meaning-based approach? What meaning? How do you understand the meaning? And then how do you apply it so that you don't go wrong, so that your accuracy is up, so that you get that 90% plus accuracy in the SE questions, okay? So that is what our agenda will be for today's evening. It will be less to learn concepts, because that you will do in your good time. More importantly, that which you know, that meaning is important on GMAT SC question, but how to implement that meaning-based approach. All right. So let me just ask you a simple question. Are we agreed? I mean, is everything clear so far to all of you before we proceed further? I mean, is the agenda for the evening clear, that we are going to understand what this meaning-based approach is and why it is important? Yes, guys, I want you to answer this question. Great. Now that we are in agreement, let me just start off with a very, very simple demonstration. Okay. All right. So here is a very simple question, guys. Okay, this is not GMAT SC level question at all, but then it has got a point to prove to all of you. And I'm going to start real simple, because I believe if you have not understood the simplest, you will definitely not understand the hardest one. So all of you give a stab to this question, and then I'll put up a poll for this very quickly. So all right, let me just put up the poll here so that you guys can. So here is the poll. It's a very simple question. There's hardly anything to it. Okay, I'll just do a quick countdown in case any one of you wants to change his or her minds. So here goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let me end the poll. All right, so the entire class is agreed that option C is the correct answer choice. Well, we'll see about that. So, okay, now when we talk about, now pay attention, guys. All right, I'll go a little slow on this. Okay, I'll go a little slow on this, but okay, one second. Sam, how do I make this screen full screen on my device? I think you can simply just drag it and try, because honestly, I don't know. I think you can just drag it and see if you can make it big. Drag it and see if you can make it big. All right. Otherwise, I think you'll be able to follow. Let me see if I can. Is it better? I think I've tried to make the screen a little bit bigger. So hold on. I think that's fine. Sam, that should be better, I think. Okay. So now, as I said, I'm going to explain this meaning-based approach very, very quickly to you. But more importantly, I will establish why it is important that you understand the meaning of the original sentence. Okay. Why is it important to understand the meaning of choice A before you proceed with eliminating the incorrect answer choices? Okay. So hold on to that thought, and I'm going to quickly. So if we look at choice A, so I'm taking this as choice A. Choice A said, although she having, all right. This whole sentence can be actually divided into 2 parts, all right. So one part would be Melissa makes sure she gives time to her children before and after her work. This is one part. And the other part starts from although, she's having a hectic schedule throughout the day. So this although is very important, okay? The intended meaning of the original sentence is to bring about a contrast. So that is the first thing that you need to keep in mind, all right? So the idea here is, even though Melissa spends a hectic day at work, she makes sure that she gives time to her children. All right, fine. So the subject here is she in choice A, but the subject does not have a verb. We know that the ing verb having if it is not preceded by any helping verb, it is not a verb. So since there is no verb to the subject she, this is incorrect, and therefore you have marked it incorrect. Fine. All right. So this means in the rest of the choices, what are you supposed to look out for? You're supposed to look out for the sense of contrast, and you're supposed to ensure that the second part or this particular error is not repeated in the other choices. Fine, let's quickly move from there. Choice B, since she has. Now, in this case, if I replace the although she having with since she has, let's see what it means. Melissa makes sure she gives ample time to her 2 school-going children before she leaves, as well as after she gets home from work, since she has a hectic schedule throughout the day. What's wrong with this? The relationship here is not of a contrast, but a cause and effect, which is not the intended meaning. All right? It is not the intended meaning, and this is what I want you to pay attention to. Okay? The intended meaning was, despite or in spite of having a hectic schedule. This says because she has a hectic schedule, that is why she gives ample time, which is illogical. Not just illogical, it is not even intended meaning. So none of you chose this. But then this should have been your approach. If this was the approach you have followed, good. If this was not the approach, you need to just keep an open mind about it, because this is a simple sentence. Had you a more complicated sentence, you could have landed up marking this as the correct answer choice. All right. Let's look at choice C. Choice C, all of you mark correct, and choice C does bring out the contrast. Despite is a contextual word telling you we are talking about a contrast, and here if I replace it, there is no subject here, so there is no she here, and therefore the having is perfectly all right. Okay, it becomes a modifying phrase. Let's look at choice D. And she has. Now let me ask you a question here, guys. Okay, give me a moment. Choice D. Now I'm asking you, choice D, is it grammatically correct or is it grammatical? Let me just ask you, reframe this. Is choice D grammatically incorrect? Is choice D grammatically incorrect? Is choice D grammatically incorrect, guys? No. Good. Good. All of you have responded to that no. Now, the thing is that it is not grammatically incorrect. Therefore, what is the problem with choice D? Sorry. The problem with choice D is it conveys a very different meaning, okay? It tells you there are 2 parts to the sentence, okay? They have been connected with and, but there is no contrasting relationship between the two. So they give you 2 pieces of information about Melissa. She gives ample time to her children, and she has a busy day at work. Sorry. So see, though this sentence is grammatically correct, it is logical, it conveys a clear meaning, yet it is not the correct answer because it does not convey the intended meaning. And therefore, you see why it is so important to understand the intended meaning. That is why it is very important to give time to the original sentence, guys. See, here you did not face any problem because the sentence itself was very simple. But think along these lines. What if you had a really long sentence, a GMAT SC level sentence, and you did not you did not spend enough time in understanding the meaning of the original sentence? Then when you're going through the choices and you come across a choice which is grammatically correct, you can so very easily fall in that trap and mark the answer choice as correct. I mean, look at E now. Look at E. Okay. So if you look at choice E, where she has. Now, there's nothing wrong with this sentence grammatically either, all right? Simply telling you that Melissa gives ample time to her children after she gets home from work, where she is busy throughout the day. But there's no contrast here, okay? And therefore, this is also not correct. So let me go back to this point, and this is a very important takeaway. Because just 10% of you believe that more time should be spent on the original choice, I would like to drive home this point. Original sentence is very important. You have to understand what was the intended meaning. And when you are choosing the correct answer choice, it must absolutely adhere to that intended meaning. Okay, it's very, very important. So this is something that you should really lock away in your minds. And this brings us to the most important part, that when you're looking at meaning-based approach, okay, the idea is you are looking for a choice which is logical. You're looking for a choice which is according to the intended meaning for which you would have analyzed the original sentence very, very clearly, very, very closely. And you're looking for an option which is concise. Let me just point out here that conciseness is not a deterministic error, okay? So it is much less important than the other two criteria, but nonetheless should be kept in mind. So now let me give you an official question, which I will give you some time to give a go at it, and then we will take on the meaning of based approach there, where again I will tell you that if you have not spent enough time on the original choice, if you have not understood the intended meaning, then there are high chances of you going wrong. All right, so before I proceed, are all of you clear with this meaning-based approach so far, guys? Are all of you clear with this? If you have questions, hold on to that for the moment. I'm sure as we proceed, I shall be able to answer all your questions. So are you clear so far with the meaning-based approach? All right. Okay, fine. Let me now quickly bring the question forward for you. Here is the question, and do not hurry through it, guys, okay? Because I'm not going to test on your time. You're not giving a test here. You're not even preparing. You're not even learning the concept. Just solve this question. Take your time and solve it, okay? Take your time and solve it, and I'll bring up the poll shortly. All right, I am going to count 10 before I end the poll. So if you are ready with your answer but have not marked it yet, please do so. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll. All right, so now interesting here, we have the class divided over two answer choices, that is C and D. 50% of you believe choice C is correct, and the other 50% believe choice D is correct. How confident each of the groups are with their choices, we will see. And you will see for yourself if you have gone wrong or where you have gone wrong. All right. So, and a small request, in between the, while I'm discussing the question, if you have any questions, just hold on to those. Once the discussion is over, I will give you time to ask questions, all right? Okay. So here goes. Now, when we look at the meaning-based approach, so what are we supposed to do? All right, we are going to read the sentence by breaking into small pieces, all right? So the first, this sentence, if you look at it again, it can be divided into two parts, all right? And the first part starts with a that, okay? So this is a good example of sentences that have a clause as a subject. That something can hardly be said, okay? So let's see. Here, that is being used to refer to the subject, which is a clause. It is like saying the fact that, okay? All right? All right. So that educators have not anticipated the impact of microcomputer technology. All right. So this is the fact which that in the beginning is referring to. Educators have not expected microcomputer technology to have the kind of impact it has had. Right? So see, you're understanding as you go along. You're breaking the sentence into pieces and you're trying to understand what it might mean. Let's see. Can hardly be said that. So we are saying that some people have not anticipated something cannot be said that. Now the second that, all right? Now the second that is clearly redundant, okay? It would be better to say can hardly be said to be. So it would be better to say that something, some people have not anticipated the impact to be like this, can hardly be said to be. That would have been correct, but that is not there, all right? So that second that is redundant and that is to be kept in mind. Let's read on. The next portion says, it is their fault. All right. Now, let's go carefully here. So, it can hardly be said that it. So, what is this pronoun it referring to here? What cannot be said to be someone's fault? That they have not anticipated something. All right. Thus, it is referring to the verb have not anticipated. Okay. They have not anticipated something, that not anticipating something, that is the it, okay? It is referring to that, and therefore we know that a pronoun can refer only to a noun, it cannot refer to a verb, and therefore this is incorrect. It is referring to have not anticipated, okay? Educators have not anticipated the impact of microcomputer technology. It is not their fault that they have not anticipated. So the it is referring to have not anticipated, the verb, all right? And that is the error here in this part. So again, this we were able to identify because we were trying to break down the sentence into small pieces and understand the role of each component which is there. And we understood that this component here does not fit. The meaning that is being intended here is that some people had not anticipated something and that is not their fault, okay? Okay. Thereafter, the sentence that begins with Alvin Toffler. So we are talking about a personality. One of the most prominent students of the future did not even mention microcomputers in Future Shock. Now, what is the purpose of this sentence? The likely purpose is, it is not the fault of the educators that they were not able to anticipate the impact. The supporting statement is, look at Alvin Toffler. He was such a prominent student of the future, even he didn't mention microcomputers. So we can't really blame the educators for not having anticipated the impact, all right? So if we put together the intended meaning, and this is what you need to do, this is why you need to spend let's say a very good part of your question solving time on the original sentence is to get together the intended meaning and obviously check out the errors which are there. So intended meaning here was the educators can hardly be said to be at fault for not having anticipated something. So what is this something that they have not anticipated? They have not anticipated the impact of microcomputer technology. And despite being one of the most important, prominent students of future, Alvin Toffler had not even mentioned this. So again, what is the purpose of putting these two things together? when such a prominent personality had not mentioned anything, the educators cannot really be expected to have anticipated something like that, right? So again, this taste of the contrast has to be brought out by the sentence that you choose as the correct answer choice. All right. So before we proceed further, I will just ask you quickly, give me a moment. Have all of you been able to understand how we analyze this question based on the meaning-based approach and how we got to the intended meaning? Have all of you followed how we spent time on choice A, understood what was the probable meaning it was trying to impart? Okay. All right, let me quickly get this. All right. So for those of you, there's a small 5% of you who have not been able to follow this. I'll quickly do a very small recap. So when we're talking about let me just go back a bit for you. The meaning analysis, okay? So what we did was we read the entire sentence in small parts. That, okay, so we're starting a sentence with that, likely a clause is going to follow. So that educators have not done something, okay? That something has not happened can hardly be said that it is their fault. So this it is referring to what? The fact that some people did not anticipate something, right? So it is referring to the verb. It is not referring to the educators. It is not referring to the impact. It is not referring to technology. What is this it referring to? It is referring to the have not anticipated. Having not anticipated is not their fault. So it is referring to have not anticipated. We know that it cannot refer to a verb. It can only refer to a noun. And therefore, that is the error here. Okay. So what was the intended meaning then? The intended meaning was the fact that the educators have not anticipated something, that fact, okay, that not having anticipated something is not the fault of the educators. So the educators can hardly be said to be at fault for not having anticipated something, all right? And the other part of the intended meaning was, what is the purpose of the Alvin Toffler sentence? Well, it is saying that Alvin Toffler, such a prominent student of the future, did not anticipate this. So how can we blame the educators for not anticipating it? All right, that is the flavor. So let me reset the poll and ask whether now things are clearer to you guys or not. 1 second, give me a moment. So let me again ask the question to all of you. Is this meaning-based approach clear to you? Reading the sentence in small parts, understanding the role of that small part, and moving forward. All right, so I'll quickly count 5 and let me see if all of you have understood that or not. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, a small percentage again has not understood, so I'm sure it will become clearer to you as we proceed with more questions. All right, I will keep pointing out, I will be following the meaning-based approach. So if you have some problem somewhere, we will solve this. And again, if you have any questions specific to this particular question, just jot it down somewhere. There'll be quite some time at the end of this session where I will answer each of your questions individually. All right, just write it down somewhere. Okay. All right, so here goes. Now we need to analyze the answer choices. So this was the intended meaning, and we have to see which answer choice imparts this intended meaning. All right, so here goes. Choice A we have already eliminated. It here is referring, it doesn't have a proper antecedent if you see it that way. It cannot refer to that. It cannot refer to educators. It cannot refer to impact. Okay, the impact is not their fault, doesn't make sense. It cannot refer to microcomputer technology. So what does this it refer to? The only thing that it seems to refer to is that not anticipating. So not anticipating is not their fault, means it is referring to a verb, and which is illogical. Therefore, it was incorrect. And none of you chose that as the correct answer choice. Let's look at choice B. Choice B says, okay, what does choice B says? It says That educators have not anticipated the impact of microcomputer technology can hardly be said to be at fault. What are we really saying here? This choice does not actually state who is at fault. See, there is no pronoun there. Okay, who is at fault here? That's not clear. In fact, what this sentence seems to mean is that something has happened can hardly be said to be at fault. So the correction here should be that something has happened can hardly be said to be their fault. All right. That educators have not done something can hardly be said to be the educator's fault or their fault. And that would have made the sentence correct. Otherwise, sentence B is illogical. Now, a good 50% of you had chosen choice C as the correct answer choice. If you look at choice C, okay, who have not anticipated the impact of microcomputer technology? Now, this is a relative pronoun clause, okay, beginning with a relative pronoun who, and it is modifying the educators. For those of you who have grounding in sentence correction, you would know that the relative pronoun clause modifies the antecedent noun or the nearest noun. So here, information is being given to you about educators. All right. So if you look at this sentence, it is not grammatically incorrect. All right. It is not grammatically incorrect. But what is the meaning of the entire sentence? Let us see that. So the sentence in the, if we put choice C in the original sentence, then the essence reads, it can hardly be said that it is the fault of a certain kind of educators. What are these certain kind of educators? These certain kind of educators are those educators who have not anticipated the impact of microcomputer technology. Now, what is the fault of the educators? The choice does not tell us that, does it? All of you, I'll just put up a poll here. The choice is telling you it can hardly be said that it is the fault of educators and a certain type of educators. But what is the fault? This sentence is not telling us that. Now, I want all of you to answer this poll, guys. 1 second, give me a moment. Now, my question is addressed to those of you who chose choice C. Can you see where you went wrong? The original sentence is telling you that you cannot hold the educators at fault just because they did not anticipate something. All right. So the intended meaning was to tell you what that fault was, for which you can't hold them blamable. But this sentence doesn't tell you what their fault was. Okay. Nothing wrong with the sentence grammatically. Everything is fine. But if you see the focus of the sentence, okay, the focus of the sentence shifts. The focus of the sentence has shifted from the fault to the educators. Okay. And thus this choice is logically and grammatically correct. Nothing wrong with that. But it does not convey the intended meaning. And that is why it is incorrect. So you see, let me drive home the point once again. If you do not pay enough attention to the original choice, if you do not follow the meaning-based approach, then you will never really know what the intended meaning was and whether the choice that you are choosing is correct, not just grammatically, but also whether it adheres to the intended meaning or not. Because that is one of the biggest and the most insidious trap that GMAT lays for students, okay? Grammatically correct, logically correct, but not per the intended meaning. Fine. All of you seem to have understood why choice C is not correct. Okay. And let's see, therefore, where does choice D lead us to? Choice D says it can hardly be said. What can hardly be said? That educators are at fault. At fault for what? For not anticipating the impact of what? Microcomputer technology. So you see, this choice is logical. It is absolutely what was intended, and therefore it is correct. So if you see, the meaning-based approach works, really works, guys. Okay, you have already derived the intended meaning through spending time on the original sentence, doing meaning analysis. So you immediately know whether the choice is to be eliminated or accepted. So your time and accuracy both will improve. All right, and this is something that really works, guys. You've got to stick to it. Try this approach consistently to get it to work. Okay. So choice E remains, and we will quickly look at choice E. Let's see what does it say. Nobody marked this, but let us still nonetheless understand why it was incorrect. Okay. The sentence reads, the fact that educators are at fault for something can hardly be said. So the fact can hardly be said. It means we can't state this fact. That itself is illogical. It is illogical to say a fact cannot be said, and therefore this choice is also incorrect. Okay. So what does this exercise establish? What it establishes is, what is the main goal of grammar in language? The main goal is to communicate clear and logical meaning. All right. The main goal is to bring about a standardization of language. And actually, all grammar rules except idioms are focused on meaning. In fact, even idioms work towards standardization of language, which is why if you think that it is very important to know the rules, it's like intuitive. If the sentence communicates clear and logical meaning, it is grammatically correct. It is following the grammatical rules, and even if you don't know those rules, absolutely. Okay. And if you see, more than 80 to 90% of the SC questions on GMAT have meaning related errors, okay? And that's a huge percentage. So it makes it easier for everyone to identify the correct choice by focusing on the meaning aspect. Since rules imply memorization and recall, something that you may not work out for you. So without delving into details of any topic, what I'll do next is I will take up one topic at a time and show how meaning-based approach can be used to solve questions related to that topic. Some of the most troublesome topics that students face are related to the perfect tenses, okay, and related to the modifiers and comparison. So we will do one of each of these three, and we will see how the meaning-based approach works, okay? So far, are you guys with me? Let me ask you here once again. Let me reset the poll. Hold on a second, guys. So far, all clear? All ready to go, guys? Ready to go for the next question? Okay, great. Great to see that enthusiasm. Okay, so now when we talk about the past perfect tense, okay, it's a very important thing that I'm going to teach you right away. Right away, it's something that you can actually apply. So pay attention, hold on to your seat belts. And again, if you have any questions, just mark them down. I'll be glad to answer them at the end of this session. So I'm sure many of you have often wondered, we have simple past tense, and why do we need perfect tenses, okay? Well, the perfect tense is needed when there are two events, okay, when there are two events that took place in the past, but not at the same time. So you have a past event 1 and a past event 2, but the catch here is they did not take place at the same time, all right? If they did not take place in the same time, you will need to clarify the order. Remember, the communication should be clear if you're to get the sentence correct. So in order to clarify the sequence of those two events, we need the past perfect, okay? Now the important takeaway, I'm just going to state that and pay attention. I'll repeat the sentence. In order to clarify the sequence of two events that took place in the past, we need the past perfect. But remember, if the sequence is clarified by the context, then you do not need the past perfect. What I'm saying is, if there is no need to clarify the sequence, then the usage of the past perfect is considered incorrect, okay? I'll give an example and I will discuss this again. So let me once again repeat this. Past perfect tense is required when there are two events in the past, but they did not take place at the same time. One took place before the other. Okay, so past perfect is needed to tell us which took place first and which took place next. Okay, and then the other takeaway is, if the context of the sentence already tells you which one took place first and which one took place next, then using the past perfect is actually incorrect. Okay, hold on to that thought. All right. Okay, let me in fact ask you, is this portion clear to you guys? What I have just stated, what I have just now told you about past perfect tense, where it should be used and where it should not be used. Is this clear to all of you? Is it clear to all of you? Great. You need to use it where you need to clarify the sequence, and where there is no need to clarify the sequence, using past perfect tense is incorrect. Okay, I think it'll become clearer as I proceed. About 10% of you say that you have not understood this. Let me use the example here to show this. Okay. All right. So let's look at the example. Let's say these are two sentences. Okay. The first sentence says, I researched about a company that went bankrupt in 2010. And the other says, I researched about a company that was incorporated in 2001. Now, let me ask you, how many of y'all, now let me start the poll once again, reset the poll. Hold on to this. All right. So how many of y'all believe that statement 1 is incorrect? How many of y'all believe statement 1 is incorrect? I'll repeat the question. How many of y'all believe statement 1 is incorrect? Okay. All right. How many of you, so none of you believe that statement 1 is incorrect. All right. That means I take it that statement 1 is correct according to the entire class, which means how many of y'all believe statement 2 is incorrect? How many of y'all believe statement 2 is incorrect? Okay, I think I have not published the poll. Sorry. Let me repeat the question. How many of y'all believe statement 1 is incorrect? Okay, I'll repeat the question, okay? How many of y'all believe statement 1 is incorrect? This is for statement 1 only. How many of y'all believe statement 1 is incorrect? Okay, 25% of you believe statement 1 is incorrect. All right, fine. Which means 75% of you believe statement 2 is incorrect. So let's see which statement is incorrect and why. Okay. If you look at the two sentences, okay, the two sentences talk about two events, right? They're talking about two events. The one event is researched and the other event is went bankrupt, all right? And both took place in the past. Now, what you need to ask yourself when you're solving such a question is, did the two take place at the same time? If not, then which took place first? Does the context tell me the sequence? Does it tell me which took place first? If it does not tell me which took place first, then how do I clarify the sequence? These are the questions you should ask yourself, okay? All right? Okay, you need to ask yourself, did the two take place at the same time? No? Then which one took place first? Does the context already tell me which one took place first? If it does not tell me, then how do I make sure that the sentence clarifies the sequence? All right, now let's see. In the first sentence, okay, the research could have taken place either before or after the company went bankrupt, correct? Think about it. The research about a company could have taken place while the company was still functioning. It could also have taken place after the company went bankrupt, all right? So that clarity is missing here, okay? And we know that language should communicate a clear meaning. So this sentence, to some, it could mean that the research took place before the company went bankrupt in 2010. To some, it could mean the research took place after the company went bankrupt in 2010. Okay, and because this is not cleared by the context, in the context there is nothing to tell you when the research took place, you need to use the past perfect to set the sequence and communicate clear meaning. So the correct version of statement 1 would be, I had researched about a company that went bankrupt in 2010, which means the research took place before 2010, before the bankruptcy. Okay, Or we could have another version. I researched about a company that had gone bankrupt in 2010, which means the bankruptcy took place first in 2010 and the research took place sometime after 2010. All right. So let me reset the poll. Okay. Now this question again is addressed to all of you. Now is it clear why past perfect tense should be used? Is it clear to all of you why past perfect tense should be used? Yes, guys, is it clear to all of you? Great. So the past perfect tense needs to be used where we need clarity, where we need to understand which event took place first and which event took place after the first, when both events took place in the past. Okay, clear so far? Fine. Now remember, I was telling you, if the context is already clearing the sequence, then we using a past perfect tense is incorrect. So this is what I'm going to talk about now. If you look at the second sentence, okay, in the second sentence the context is clearing the sequence. How? The research could not have taken place before the company was incorporated, could it? You can't research something that has not even been made. Thus, the context already tells you the sequence and the meaning is clear. Now, in this statement is correct. In fact, if you use the past perfect here, then it would be incorrect. If I say I had researched about a company that was incorporated in 2001, incorrect. I researched about a company that had been incorporated in 2001, incorrect. Why? Because obviously the incorporation would have taken place first and the research after that. Okay, so the context here is clearing the ambiguity in the time and the sequence, and therefore no past perfect tense required. All right, so is that clear to all of you guys? The takeaway, is it clear where to use the past perfect and where not to use it? Is that clear to all of you? Is it clear where you should use the past perfect tense and where you should not use it? Great. And this is a very important takeaway, guys. I have seen so many questions on the GMAT, questions which test you on the verb tenses, which test you on this one factor, confusing the past tense, the simple past tense with the past perfect tense. So you need to have the clarity that if I'm using past perfect tense, it should be used only under these circumstances. There is a sequence that needs to be established, only then. If there is no sequence that needs to be established, not going to use past perfect tense. Okay, great. So now I'm going to bring a full-length question that focuses on the application of this meaning-based understanding. Okay, so let me bring up the question for all of you. Here is the question, and take your time. Once again, divide your sentence, pause and read, understand the meaning, understand the role. Please adhere to this approach. You've got to follow it to believe in it. Okay, so all the best in solving this question. Let me bring up the poll. Okay, I am going to end the poll. I'm going to count 10 and then I'm going to end the poll. All right. So here goes 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. All right. So let's see what have we got. 14% of you have marked choice A as the correct choice. None of you have gone for choice B. 7% of you have marked choice C, 36% of you have marked D, and 43% of you have marked E. All right, so what the results tell me is you're not sure. Most of you are not sure, okay? I mean, D and E are a very close call. And let's see whether either of them are the correct answer choices or any of the others. All right, so here goes our meaning-based approach. Now, so if we were looking at the meaning-based approach, we would start reading by dividing the sentence into small parts. All right. So here we are saying more than 130,000 Arabs had immigrated to the United States. Okay. So all right. So far, so good. More than. Now the problem with this part is they had immigrated to the United States. Good. As part of the Great Migration and lived and worked. So they lived and worked after the immigration or before the immigration? Obviously, they would have lived and worked across United States only after they had immigrated, right? So the use of the past perfect had immigrated is incorrect, all right? The Arabs could not have lived and worked, which are both in the simple past tense, in the US before they immigrated. So the context sets the sequence here, okay? And in such cases, you are not to use the past perfect to indicate the sequence. That would be considered incorrect, all right? Okay, so this is the learning that that the last example was given to show, and this is the learning that we are putting into effect in a proper GMAT level question here. Okay, so we know that had immigrated is incorrect in this part. There was no need to use the past perfect tense. Let us move to the rest of the sentence. Fighting its many wars and engaged. All right. So fighting its many wars and engaged. Who were fighting its many wars and engaged? We are talking about the Arabs. Now, what is to be looked at here is the verbal fighting is modifying the verbs lived and worked. Okay. Again, as you proceed, you will learn that when a ing verbal is separated from a clause by a comma, then that ing verbal is modifying the verb in that clause, nearest verb. So here, lived and worked, and while they were living and working, they were fighting its many wars. Okay. So Arabs were fighting the wars. Engaged is joined to fighting by and. Okay. Engaged is joined to fighting by and. So then engaged should be engaging so that the two modifiers become parallel. All right, correct version would be fighting its many wars and engaging. Okay, again, since we're not really talking about parallelism here, so I'm going to teach you that. But point here is when you're joining two verbals with a connector, the verbal should be in the same form. Say, for example, to fight and to engage, fighting and engaging, fought and engaged, and so on. That is parallelism in very short version for you. So this part has that error. So we know two errors that we were able to point out in the original sentences: the incorrect use of the past perfect tense and the error in the parallelism. That is, the verbal engaged should have been engaging. All right. So with that in mind, with that analysis, what was the intended meaning here? The intended meaning was more than 130,000 Arabs immigrated to the United States as part of the Great Migration. Okay. They lived and worked throughout the US after this immigration. While they lived and worked in the US, they also fought the wars for US and engaged in the transformative debates that took place throughout this time period. This was the intended meaning. And per this intended meaning, we are now going to look at the choices. Okay. So let me ask you, for those of you who chose choice A, Are you clear why choice A is incorrect? Are you guys clear? Those of you who chose choice A as the correct answer choice, are you clear why choice A is incorrect? Great. Okay, so this is a very important learning, and keep it in mind next time you're checking sentences that have past perfect tense. All right. Okay, great. So let us now move forward with the answer choice analysis. So here comes our first answer choice. We have already eliminated this as being illogical. Okay, let's move to choice B. So here comes choice B. What does choice B say? Arabs immigrated to the United States and had lived and worked across the breadth of the United States. Now, if you look at the use of the past perfect tense, had lived implied, they lived even before they immigrated, and this is therefore illogical. They could not have lived in the US before the immigration. Okay, this is one error. The other is the prepositional phrase as part of the Great Migration. Okay, this placement after this placement is incorrect. It implies that the fighting of the wars was a part of the Great Migration. Okay, fighting its wars as part of the Great Migration is not per the intended meaning, and therefore this choice is incorrect. Again, none of you chose choice B, so perhaps what you need to check is, did you eliminate it for the reasons that I have discussed just now? Okay, so had lived is incorrect, number one. They could not have had lived even before they immigrated. The other is the wars were not fought as a part of the Great Migration. Okay, they immigrated to the United States as a part of the Great Migration. That was the intended meaning. So choice B is out. Let's see choice C. A very small percent of you had chosen choice C, but whether it is correct or not, let's see. So here is choice C. Arabs immigrated to the United States, okay, and lived and worked across the breadth of the United States. That is also fine. As part of the Great Migration, okay, fighting its many wars and engaging. So if I look at choice C, everything is in place, right? Okay, the prepositional phrase as part of the Great Migration is, sorry, I'm so sorry. It is placed, it is modifying. If I look at the prepositional phrase as part of the Great Migration, it is incorrectly placed, implying that living and working was a part of the Great Migration. Okay, living and working was not a part of the Great Migration. The immigration was a part of the Great Migration. Okay, so those of you who mark this as a correct answer, everything else is fine. The verbs are in place. The fighting and engaging is in place. But what was a part of the Great Migration is not per the intended meaning. So let me again ask the very small percent, even though it's a small percent, those of you who marked the correct answer as choice C, are you clear why choice C is incorrect? Are you guys clear why choice C is incorrect? Great, great. All of you are clear, so that's great. All right, so let's move on from choice C. Choice C is incorrect, therefore. And let us now move to choice D. Choice D has the same error, had immigrated. Okay, so if you had spent enough time on the original sentence, then while going through the split of the answer choices, you would have eliminated choice D right away. Okay, so choice D is eliminated. Let us look at choice E. Okay, choice D. Though a lot of you had marked choice D as the correct answer. Okay, so let me again put a poll for you guys. 1 second. Those of you who chose choice D as the correct answer, are you clear why choice D is not the correct answer? Are you clear? Those of you who marked D as the correct answer, are you clear why D is not correct? Right. Had immigrated cannot have taken place before lived and worked. Okay, great. So let's quickly move to choice E. What does choice E say? Arabs immigrated to the United States. So simple. Arabs immigrated to the United States in the past. And this immigration was a part of the Great Migration. Yes. And lived and worked across the breadth of the United States. So the Arabs, they immigrated. Then thereafter, they lived and worked. The context already clears the time frame. Therefore, we don't need a past perfect tense, and it is not there. Fighting its many wars and engaging perfect. They are also parallel, and therefore choice E is correct and per the intended meaning. So for those of you who mark choice E as the correct answer choice, well done. If you were able to choose E because of the reasons that we have just discussed, very good. And if you have been able to do this following the meaning-based approach, you would realize how important it is to understand or to give time to the original sentence. Okay, I'm sure the others have also understood that had they given enough time to the original sentence, in case if you haven't given, things would have been very different. All right. So what we'll do now is, I mean, the most common confusion, therefore, if I look at the most common confusion around the past perfect tense, okay, it is to do with where and why we should use the past perfect and not the simple past, and vice versa. Where and why we should use the present perfect and not the simple past, and vice versa. So what we have done is we have shared the same in our free trial, and you can definitely go and visit the site and check out the free trial. We want you to go through them to understand the difference from the perspective of the meaning-based approach. All right. Okay. So next coming up is the modifiers. So I'll discuss a very small aspect of the modifier, as pointed out earlier. I taught you a very small aspect of the past perfect tense. Okay. But it is a very important takeaway. Similarly, I'll lead you through a very small aspect of one of the modifiers. All right. So when we are looking at modifiers, the ed verbal, okay, the ed verbals, they are verb-like words that end in ed or en or t, but they are not verbs. They are modifiers. Okay, they could be adjectives, they could be adverbs. They are modifiers. Say, for example, worked, spoiled, drunken, etc. All right. If I give you more, the spoiled brat, the drunken driver. So these are verbals. And what do the ed verbals do? They are modifiers, and they always modify a noun and nothing else. Now, this is what you need to remember. An ed verbal, I'm talking about the ed modifier. It cannot modify a verb. It cannot modify anything but a noun. All right. Say, when you look at a sentence like the Taj Mahal, surrounded by gardens and lit by the moonlight, is a sight to behold. Okay. So let me just ask you in the chat itself, guys. In this example, what is the verb? I mean, how you can just tell me what is the verb? Is or are, how many verbs are there, or what are the words which are verbs? You can answer in the chat box, guys. In the sentence, the Taj Mahal surrounded by gardens and lit by the moonlight is a sight to behold, which of the words are verbs? Which of the words are verbs? Yes? Just type in the words which you believe are verbs quickly. And I'll give you a very important tip here in case you are confused. All right, so let's see. Okay, so Sam says it's to be behold, ononno and Shrinkla and Anjali. You believe the verb is. Yes, I would like all of you to participate. So Nitish believes surrounded, lit, and behold. Okay, come on, guys. I want some more of you to answer up. It's a very simple question. I am simply asking you, which of the words in this sentence are verbs? So if you believe one word is a verb, okay. If you believe two, okay, three. I just want you to tell me which words are the verbs. And this is this is one of the very serious errors tested on the GMAT. So I'll give you a very, very wonderful tip to distinguish between the verb and the modifier. But I want more of you to answer quickly. Shikha says it is. Come on, guys. It's not bad to be wrong, even if you are wrong. It's fun. Okay, so let's see. Now we know that a verb is a word which has to have a doer or the subject. Okay, we have to have a subject. So whenever you come across the ed verb like word, let's put it this way, and you are confused, okay, Amlesh, okay, now I have more answers coming in. Good. So surrounded, lit, behold, says Amlesh. Noreem says surrounded and behold. Shrinkla has put in surrounded, lit, and behold. But is acting as the verb here, says Shrinkla. All right, great, Shrinkla. Good. So you see here, now let me proceed in a very simple manner. Let's say you read till the Taj Mahal surrounded by gardens, till there only. Now ask a very simple question: who surrounded or what surrounded? Don't add any helping verb. Don't ask what was surrounded. Don't ask who was surrounded. Simply ask what surrounded or who surrounded. In this case, who surrounded does not apply because Taj Mahal is not a who. But if you ask what surrounded, did Taj Mahal surround something? No. Taj Mahal did not do the surrounding. Therefore, surrounded is not a verb. When you ask what surrounded or who surrounded and you don't get the answer as the subject, it means that ed word is not a verb. Okay, Taj Mahal did not surround the gardens. Taj Mahal did not go around lighting up something. Okay, so surrounded here is not a verb. Understand that. Surrounded is a ed verbal. It is giving you more information about Taj Mahal. It is describing the Taj Mahal. So the Taj Mahal surrounded by gardens. The Taj Mahal lit by moonlight. If I ask who lit, did Taj Mahal lit up the moonlight? Did Taj Mahal do the lighting? No. So lit is also not the verb. Okay. So if I remove this, surrounded by gardens is one, let's say, modifying phrase here. Lit by the moonlight is another modifying phrase. If I remove this entire phrase thing here, what do I get? The Taj Mahal is a site. So now I ask a question. What is a site? The Taj Mahal is. Good, bingo. Is a verb because I have an answer to my verb. I have a subject. Okay. A sight to behold. Now, to behold is also verbal. In fact, two verbals, to behold, to eat, to drink, are never verbs. Okay, that's a discussion for another class altogether. But right now, let me tell you, two verbals, to plus whatever verb form you have, will never be a verb. It is always an intention or a purpose, something that somebody wants to do. It is not the action. Okay, so in this entire sentence, the only verb you have is. As Shrinkala pointed out, is acting as the verb. The other verb like words, surrounded, lit, or to behold, they are all modifiers. Okay, what kind of a sight? A sight to behold. What is surrounded by gardens? Taj Mahal. What is lit by moonlight? Taj Mahal. So surrounded by gardens, lit by moonlight, to behold, they are all modifying different parts of the sentence, but the verb is. All right, so now let me ask all of you a very important question. Are you clear with this discussion? Let me just reset the poll, guys. Are all of you clear about which word is the verb in this sentence and how we arrived at that? By asking two simple questions. What or who? What surrounded? No, I'm not getting the correct answer. Who surrounded? Not the answer. What lit? No. Who lit? No. What is? Taj Mahal is. What lit? What is the sight to behold? The Taj Mahal is. Correct. Great. All of you have understood this. So we have a question to do with the modifier here. The next question that is coming up is to do with the modifier. And let's see how you. So the takeaway here is the ed verbal. Okay. The ed, where it is acting as a modifier, can modify only a noun. It cannot modify any other word. If a ed verbal is modifying the verb of a sentence, it is an error. Okay. So with that takeaway, here is the full length question for you. All the best, guys. Give it a stab, take your time, go slow, divide your sentence, understand the meaning, understand the role, and then only choose wisely. Remember to spend time on the original sentence, understanding the intended meaning. Good luck. All right, guys. So I'm going to end the poll and I'm quickly going to count 10. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and 1. Let me end the poll. Okay, so we have markers for every option. Just excuse me for a moment. I've got a drink where my throat is. Okay, so we have a small 9% who has marked choice A, 9% for choice B, 55% for choice C. Then we have good healthy 18% for D and another 9% for E. Okay, let's get going. So, 1 second. Yeah. Now let's start with our meaning analysis. So, if we look at this part of the sentence, based on toxicity and exposure risks. So again, here, if you ask what based or who based, you don't get any answer. So you know, based on toxicity and exposure risks is a ED modifier phrase, and it should modify a noun. Okay. So by that logic, this modifier phrase is placed next to the nouns pesticides and toxic substances and contaminants. So it must be modifying these. So what it means is the pesticides are based on toxicity. The toxic substances are based on toxicity. The contaminants are based on toxicity. Now, does that make sense? It illogically conveys the meaning that the pesticides, etc., are based on toxicity. Okay, the pesticides are based on exposure risk. This meaning is incorrect, and therefore we know that you need to rephrase the sentence. Okay. Now, I'm sure some of you might be thinking, what is the problem in saying that pesticides, etc., can be banned based on toxicity? Now, let's understand what is wrong with it. Okay. When we say pesticides, etc., were banned on toxicity, based on toxicity, what we are saying is, okay, what we are trying to modify is the action of banning and not the noun entities. Okay, the banning was done on the basis of toxicity. The banning was done on the basis of the exposure risks. Okay, so can we use the ed verbal to modify actions? Can we use the ed verbal to modify the actions banned or restricted? No, we know we cannot. Okay, So the banning was not based on toxicity, okay? And therefore, they cannot be used. We cannot use it here. And this usage is logically incorrect, okay? The correct version would have been something like this. On the basis of toxicity and exposure risks becomes a prepositional phrase, okay? Starting with the preposition on. And that is modifying the action banned or restricted even though it is placed far away. And that is correct. Right? So are you clear by this part, guys? Well, let me just reset this poll. 1 second. Are all of you clear why based on toxicity and exposure risk is incorrect? Because it implies the meaning the pesticides are based on toxicity. All right, let me rephrase my question. Based on toxicity and exposure risk is a modifier, okay? We know that the ed verbal can modify only a noun. That means it is going to give us some information about the noun. All right. So what we are saying is the pesticides are based on toxicity. The toxic substance is based on toxicity. Now, does that even sound logical? The pesticide is based on exposure risk. No. I understand that when you read the sentence, you know that the banning was done on the basis of something, but that is not what this sentence means actually. Although that is the intended meaning, that is not what this sentence means, because the ed verbal cannot modify a verb, and that is what it is doing here. So let me ask my question once again. Hold on a sec. Are you guys now clear why based on toxicity and exposure risks is incorrect? Are you guys clear why we cannot use based on toxicity next to pesticides? All right, all of you are clear with that. Great, that's great. And this is again a very, very common, very subtle, but very common error on the GMAT, okay? An ed verbal which appears to be modifying the noun is actually modifying the verb, okay? And that you realize only if you are approaching this question based on the meaning analysis. So what is based on toxicity? Pesticides. Oh my God, that's illogical. And then you know it is incorrect. So let's move ahead with our analysis. Next, we will analyze the remaining part of the sentence. Okay, so this I've already pointed out to you. On the basis is modifying banned or restricted, which is perfectly fine. Okay, all right. Which led to a significant decrease in air and water pollution levels in the city. All right. So which, again, here we have a relative pronoun clause, and this is modifying a relative pronoun clause always modifies the nearest noun. So what it means here is, okay, what it means here is the EPA led to a significant decrease in air. Now, that is incorrect, okay? The idea is not that the EPA led to a decrease. The idea is the action of banning or restricting, okay? The action of banning or restricting the certain substances led to the decrease in pollution levels. But by placing which next to EPA, that meaning is not brought out. In this case, the correct version, okay, has to be a rephrasing of the sentence. The sentence should clearly bring out the idea that it was the banning and the restriction which led to a significant decrease in air. All right, so keeping that in mind, we arrive at the intended meaning. What is the intended meaning here? Let's quickly look at it. Pesticides, toxic substances, and contaminants were either banned or restricted by the EPA. This ban or restriction was placed on the basis of toxicity and exposure risks of the said substances. And this ban or restriction led to decrease in air and water pollution levels, right? See, so once you have put together that intended meaning, now it is just a sort of a formality to look at the answer choices and eliminate them, all right? So let me ask you again, wait on a second. Are you guys clear with the analysis of this question and the intended meaning? Are all of you clear with the analysis and the intended meaning? Great. Now let's see how we are going to eliminate the answer choices. So here goes. Choice A, we know, is illogical and therefore it is incorrect. Let's look at choice B. What does choice B say? Now, apart from the error based on, which is the same as choice A, you see leading here is placed next to EPA. Okay, leading here is also a modifier. Again, I'm not going to go into the ing modifier today, but ing here is not a verb because it is not preceded by a helping verb. So leading is modifying the closest noun, that is EPA, and that is incorrect. All right, EPA is not leading to a decrease in air and water pollution. And therefore, choice B is also incorrect. All right, so let's now move to choice C. Here is choice C. Choice C is the correct choice. We have already identified this. We have already kind of guessed at this. But even if we had not, and if we were reading this, the meaning is very clear. On the basis of toxicity and exposure risks, what was done? Banned or restricted. What was banned or restricted? Pesticides. Who banned it? EPA. Now you see, the ing modifier leading is separated by the clause, separated from the clause by a comma. All right, and that means leading is modifying the nearest verb. So the banning and restriction led to the decrease in the air and water pollution levels, and therefore it is correct. Had that comma not been there, as in the case of choice B, it meant that leading was modifying EPA. But the moment EPA and leading are divided by that comma, then leading is no longer modifying EPA, it is modifying the nearest verb. All right, so C is correct. Now, have all of you, let me just end this poll, have all of you understood? One second, guys. Have all of you understood why choice C is correct? Those of you especially who had not marked choice C as the correct answer choice, are you clear why choice C is correct? Are all of you clear why choice C is correct? Perfect. Right? So the lesson that we learned, that an ed verbal can only modify a noun, has been tested here. And of course, the ing modifier is also being tested here. An ing modifier can modify a verb, it can modify a noun, both. If it is modifying a noun, it has to be placed right next to it with no commas. If it is modifying a verb, there should be a comma separating the clause from the modifier. Okay. Now let's see why the other choices were not correct. So choice D. Now, if you look at this portion, pesticides, toxic substances and contaminants were either banned or restricted by the EPA and led to. Okay. Here, if I look at choice D, then and is a connector here. Since and is a connector and the subject is pesticides, toxic substances and contaminants, so what meaning we are conveying here is pesticides, toxic substances and contaminants led to the decrease in pollution. Okay, now that did not lead to a decrease in pollution. The pesticides did not lead to a decrease in pollution, and therefore it is illogical and of course different from the intended meaning, and therefore it is incorrect. So again, for those of you who marked choice D as the correct choice, for those of you who marked choice D as the correct choice, are you clear why it is not correct? Choice D, for those of you who marked it as correct, are you clear why it is not correct? Because and is a connector. So what is the subject of and? Pesticides. So pesticides were banned and pesticides led to the decrease, which is the error. It does not make sense. Okay, great. Let us quickly look at choice E. Okay, now in choice E, pesticides, toxic substances, and contaminants which were either banned or restricted by the EPA led to decrease. Now, let's remove the modifier here, okay? If I remove the modifier, my sentence actually reads, pesticides, toxic substances led to decrease, okay? See, if you remove the modifier based on, the rest of the sentence implies the toxic substances, etc., led to a decrease, which is again illogical and therefore is incorrect. So once again, since a very small percentage of you did mark choice E as the correct answer, is it clear why choice E is incorrect? Guys, is it clear why choice E is incorrect? Is it clear why choice E is incorrect? Okay, great. Fine. Now let me quickly bring up the last of the questions of this session, after which I'll share the PDF of this session with you so that you can go through it once again and look at the learnings from the session. So in questions based on comparison, again, pay attention, close attention here to the learning that I'm going to show you here. In questions based on comparison, one of the most common errors that is tested is the error of omission. What is this error of omission? In comparison related sentences, we can choose not to repeat common words. Say, for example, if you look at this sentence, Rachel's handwriting is better than Jane's handwriting. Now here you can omit the word handwriting, okay, which comes twice, without changing the meaning of the sentence. Just give me a moment, guys, 1 minute. So here we can omit the word handwriting because it is being written twice. So even if we write Rachel's handwriting is better than Jane's, the understanding is that we are talking about Jane's handwriting. There is no ambiguity here in understanding the intended meaning. But in case any such omission, if you're omitting something which raises an ambiguity, which causes a confusion in understanding the meaning, which leads to an unclear meaning, then the omission is not accepted and it is an error. So if omission of common terms leads to an ambiguity or creates confusion, it is required to repeat them. So I'll bring up the question and we will understand this better with the help of that question, right? So here is the question for you. Okay, this entire sentence is to be taken as underlined, guys. It's not underlined here, but the entire sentence is to be taken as underlined here. So give it a shot. I'll bring up the poll in a moment. All the best, guys. Okay, it seems that the entire class has answered this question, so I'll still do a quick countdown of 10 before I start with the discussion. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. So let's see what we've got. 13% of you have chosen choice A. 25% of you have chosen choice B. 13% of you have chosen choice C. 25% D, and another 25 E. So that's almost, pretty much kind of a distribution. B, D, and E, each of these choices have 25% of you marking it. All right, let's see why so much of confusion, okay? So once again, keep in mind that understanding the intended meaning by analyzing the original sentence is the key, okay? Keep that in mind. Okay, so let's get started with our analysis and see where we might have gone wrong. So if I look at the meaning, now in this sentence here we are comparing the works of Italian sculptors, okay, to what? We are comparing the work of the Italian sculptors to the work of Greek artists. Okay, now hold on, I think I've preempted. So far so good. So we are comparing works of Italian sculptors to the works of Greek artists. Okay. Okay. And the works of Greek artists, the works of Italian sculptors are more identical to the works of Greek artists than the French ones. So the works of Italian sculptors are more identical to the works of Greek artists than what? Now here French ones could imply two things. It could imply that the works are more identical to the French artists themselves, and this would be illogical. Or it could imply that the works are more identical to the French artists' works, which is logical. But then the meaning is not clear. And that is the error in the original sentence, okay? It is not clear that we are comparing the works of the Italian sculptors to what, okay? We're comparing, the comparison is that it is more identical to one type of work than to the other type of work or than to the other type of artists. Okay, that is not clear. And why is that not clear? Because to the works has been omitted, right? Had it been given that the works of the Italian sculptors are more identical to the works of the Greek artists than to the works of the French ones, it would have been correct. It would have implied the correct meaning. In fact, that would have been the intended meaning, and that would have been correct. But as it stands, the sentence has a certain ambiguity to it. We don't know what is being compared to what. We cannot assume that, all right? Okay. We know it is logical that the works would be compared, but it has to be clearly brought out by the center, and the omission is not accepted in such cases. So the intended meaning actually was the works of the Italian sculptors are more identical to the works of the Greek artists than the works of the Italian sculptors are identical to the works of the French ones. Here the French ones would mean the French sculptors or the artists. So are you guys clear? Now let me just reset this. Are you guys clear with this intended meaning? Are you guys clear where the original sentence was incorrect? And okay, many of you are not clear with this meaning, so let me just go back to it a bit. All right, let me just go back quickly. All right, so see here again, let me quickly run you through this. If you break the sentence, the works of the Italian sculptors, all right, so we are talking about works of Italian sculptors are more identical. That means we are comparing the Italian sculptors' works to two things here: works of Greek artists and French ones. Now, French ones is referring to what? The French artists' works or the French artists themselves? You cannot assume that it is referring to the works when nothing like that has been mentioned. That omission is creating an error here, okay? So what was being compared was, hold on a sec, the comparison could be between two things. The works of the Italian sculptors are more identical either to the French artists, which is illogical. You can't compare the work to the French artists, or the works are more identical to the French artist's works. In that case, which makes sense, but that is not clear because to the works has been omitted before the French ones. So what the sentence intended was, the Italian sculptor's works are more identical to the works of the Greek artists than they are identical to the works of the French ones. So to the works of the French ones is missing. Okay, let me therefore now reset my poll and ask you, are all of you clear with what the intended meaning was? Are all of you clear why the original sentence is incorrect? Are all of you clear with the idea that there is an ambiguity there about the comparison? Great. Now it is very easy to miss out on this small aspect. See, let me read the full sentence. The works of the Italian sculptors are more identical. They are more identical to what? To the works of the Greek artists. All right. So they are more identical to a certain type of work than the French ones. So now this French ones, are we to automatically assume that ones refers to works? No, the ones could refer to artists as well. So if I expand the sentence, the works of the Italian sculptors are more identical to the works of the Greek artists than the works of the French ones. This is what the meaning should be. But the word works is missing, to the works is missing. And therefore, this sentence as is fails to convey the required meaning. Okay? It fails to convey that required meaning. So the intended meaning was, the Italian sculptor's works is more identical to the Greek artist's works than it is identical to the French artist's works. Okay? Now, I hope this is clearer, and let me reset the poll. So let me ask you, are you clear with this original sentence, where it is going wrong? Simply explained, the words to the works of is missing before the phrase French ones, and therefore it is incorrect. Great. I know it is a little confusing, and that's the whole purpose, to confuse students. So if you are not dividing the sentence and reading it, if you're not paying close attention to the intended meaning, then you will very likely go wrong. And as we have seen in the answer poll, you were kind of very, very divided over the answer choices. Okay, we did not really have a very big majority for any one particular choice. With this understanding of the intended meaning, let's move forward with elimination of the answer choices. Okay. All right. So here is choice A. We eliminated it. It's ambiguous, and therefore it is not the correct answer. Let's look at choice B. The works of the Italian sculptors are more identical to the works of the Greek artists than the French ones are. So the only thing different in choice B is the addition of the word are. Now let's see, this addition, does it bring about clarity, or does it add to the confusion, or is it simply not required? Let's see. So let's see, the works of Italian sculptors are more identical to the works of Greek artists than what? Well, again we have it. It could be their works. Okay, their works are more identical either to the French artists are. That would be illogical as well. Okay, the are is unnecessary. All right. I mean, what you're saying is the works are more identical either to the French artists, which is illogical. And if you say works are more identical to the French artists' works are, the are is not required. That is redundant, and therefore that is the error, making this sentence incorrect. Look at it very closely. Look at the two versions. Works are more identical either to the French artists, or works are more identical to the French artists' works are. It could mean either of these two things. It is built along the lines of choice A. Just the word are has been added at the end of French ones, And if we again divide the two meanings, we get a dual meaning, and the R makes no difference. So for those of you who marked choice B as the correct answer choice, is it clear why choice B is not the answer? Are all of you clear why choice B is not the answer? Perfect. And again, this was possible if you were dividing your sentence into small pieces and analyzing the role and understanding the meaning and moving on. Okay. All right. Let's look at the next choice. There is choice C. Okay. 25% of you, I guess, chose choice C. So let's see. The works of Italian sculptors, okay, are more identical to the works of the Greek artists than to the works of the French ones. The to the works of French ones makes it very clear that we are comparing the works here. So there are three artists here, the Italian, the Greek, and the French, okay, and their works are being compared. The Italian works are more identical to the Greek works than they are identical to the French works, and therefore this sentence is correct. Okay, and you can see therefore that by omitting those three words, two works of we had created that ambiguity, and this choice removes that ambiguity. Okay, so again, for those of you who did not mark choice C as the correct answer, are you clear with this? For those of you who got this question wrong, are you clear with choice C? Great. Okay, let's quickly move to the next answer choices and see, because we had 25% and 25% selecting choice D and E. So let's see where it went wrong, because this is a trap. Choice D is a very good trap. Now, why is it a trap? Let's see. In choice D, in this sentence, omission is at play, okay? And we'll apply the meaning-driven approach to see if it is correct or not. So let's try. Now, there are two scenarios that are possible here, okay? Scenario one is the works of Italian sculptors are more identical to that of Greek artists than the works of the French artists are to that of Greek artists. So here the comparison, okay, in this case, the comparison is between the works of Italian and French artists with the French artists, and the parameter is what? More identical to a third party, that is a work of the Greek artists. Okay, but this is another meaning, but there is another meaning that can be conveyed. So let us recap scenario one. In scenario one, it could be that the works of Italian sculptors are more identical to the works of Greek artists than the works of the French artists are to that of Greek artists. So we could be comparing the works of Italian and French artists with the work of Greek artists, but this is not the intended meaning. Okay, let's see scenario two. The works of the Italian sculptors are more identical to that of Greek artists than the works of the Italian artists are to that of French artists. I know this is confusing, but again, see, what are we comparing here? In this case, the comparison is between the works of Greek and French artists, and the parameter being compared is which of them is more identical to a third thing, that is the work of Italian artists. If you have two scenarios that can be derived from the same sentence, you know something is wrong. Okay, these two meanings are completely different and the sentence fails to convey the intended meaning, and therefore choice D is incorrect. Okay, look at it, take a moment to look at this. This sentence could mean two things, all right, and therefore it is incorrect. So let me ask those of you who marked choice D, are you clear why choice D is incorrect? Are all of you clear why choice D is incorrect? Great. Great. That's wonderful to see that all of you are following this. See how the meaning-based approach, how your analysis of the original sentence helps. Okay, let's quickly run through with choice C. I know all of you are tired maybe, so but then this was a very good learning session. So look at choice E. Again, in choice E, you can we've already been through this. The R is redundant at the end of the sentence, okay? Apart from the rest of it, the R is redundant. The works of is still missing, and therefore choice E is incorrect. I think by now, those of you who chose choice E, you know why choice E is incorrect. All right. So with that, with the end of that question, what we have understood is, let's recap the learnings, very important learnings, okay? What is required to understand the meaning of a sentence? Rules of grammar? Not really, or not the only thing. What you need to understand and what is very important is you pause and read. You've seen how we've kept breaking up sentences to pause, read, and to understand the role played by that small chunk of the sentence, and thereafter we are putting together the meaning. So the role of each entity, and what we have done is we have dedicated units that help you learn the basic components of a sentence. We have dedicated units that help you to identify the subject verb pair. You've seen in the question earlier how it was important to identify whether it was a verb or an ed verbal. Okay, so identifying the subject verb pair, differentiating between verbs and verbals. I have given you a very small insight in that. And pause point. So there are dedicated units in our module on teaching you each of these concepts. So you are thorough with it and you're able to analyze the sentence using these concepts. And once you learn these skills, okay, what we have done is we have given you frameworks. We focus on the framework-driven approach. We have these frameworks that help you look for the right kind of errors in the right places. We have the golden rule framework. It makes simple for you to understand the rules related to the subject-verb pair, to the noun-pronoun pair, to the modified entity and modifier pair. Okay, we have lists framework which help you identify errors in parallelism and in comparison questions. Okay, so this is the way our modules are designed to lead you right from the basics of a sentence to the highest level of the grammatical errors. Okay. Now, there's another thing which I always believe is very important for a student who is preparing earnestly for a particular exam. You must recognize where you're going wrong right there and then when you are going wrong. If you realize that you're going wrong at a particular place, let's say way down the line, then it's too late to recover on those errors. In fact, it might be too late for you to understand those errors. So if you do not cover the gaps, in understanding of the concepts right away, you will struggle later on. Okay, many times students ignore the gaps that are left even after going through the concepts, and they keep on proceeding to the advanced concepts and solving questions. They think that solving questions is important, but that's not the point. Okay, if you're still making mistakes despite having gone through all the concepts, then you have not understood where you're going wrong. So that is where, if you remember earlier on, we were talking about statistics not providing actionable insights. Our course provides you insights right at the moment when you're making the error, so that you can correct your errors right away. If you're making an error in recognizing the concepts related to, let's say, relative pronoun clauses and their uses, then there and then, while learning the concepts, while going through the concept quizzes, we will tell you that you are regularly committing an error there and you need to modify it there and then. Okay, no other course does that for you. All right, to tell you exactly where you're going wrong and how to rectify it and redirect you towards that module so that you can rectify your errors there and then. All right, so our course improves in real time, if you can call it. Okay, if you're not doing well on some concepts, we point it out to you right away and tell you that, okay, boss, look, this is the point that you have to go back to before you proceed further. All right, and that makes it the most effective way to learn. Such real-time interventions really very effective, since it saves you a lot of time later on. Imagine your plight when you've gone through the entire course and you realize you're still your status quo. Okay, you're back to square one. So that brings us to the end of this webinar, and I'll be very happy to field your questions, guys. If you have any, you can put your questions in the chat box and I will reply to you verbally or